Hello and welcome to Healing Tips from the Heart, Intuition with Helpers, Healers, and Guides. I am your host, Dr. Lori Hops, licensed psychologist, writer, and artist. I've explored mind, body, and spirit related to intuition, or your personal guidance system, since early childhood. Meet my guests who have learned from their personal and professional lives to explore vast realms of knowing, synchronicities, and overcoming challenges. Their stories may inspire you with tools to enhance your daily living and relationships. Hello, everyone, and I warmly welcome my guest, Dr. Craig Weiner, chiropractor. And I'd love to tell you a little bit about him before we start. He has spent over 35 years working in the healthcare field. He is the director of EFT Tapping Training Institute and currently serves as the chair of the Board of Trustees for EFT International. He is also certified and accredited master trainer of trainers for EFT International and a master certified trainer for matrix reimprinting. He's the founder of Tapping Out of Trauma continuing education seminars, and along with his wife, Alina Frank, they have co-produced a film called The Science of Tapping, and are the creators of the podcast EFT Nation. He is profoundly interested in emotional and physical connections that stem from adversity and trauma, as well as the facilitation of transforming trauma into post-resilience and post-traumatic growth. And I very warmly welcome my guest today, Dr. Craig Weiner. Hello, Craig.
Hi, Lori. It's always wonderful to see you, whether it's in person or on the screen. It's always a joy. So it's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your podcast. I'm really excited to start listening to the other episodes, and welcome to the world of podcasting. It's a lot of fun, isn't it?
Yeah, it's only been a few months since this dream was created, and took me a bit by surprise, but here I am. And here you are. So thank you very much. Craig, is there anything else you'd like to share before we talk more about helpers, healers, and guides, and intuition, and healing from the heart, and so on?
I just want to say I love that we're having this. It's not always the conversation that I end up having on podcasts, and the opportunity to just have an authentic exploration together is fun. I don't think there's anything I need to add to begin. Let's just see where this goes today, because that's
Wonderful.
Always the most exciting, fun part, right? To just see how the journey takes us
Yes.
when we create a space for inquiry.
Yeah, so I'd like everyone to know that you and I have known each other for several years now. We work pretty closely together on the board of directors for the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology. That's where I got to meet you and work with you. So that's been delightful. And we've met in person several times in different cities for conferences and running into each other. And is it all right with you if I share the story about the airplane in Palm Springs?
Please go ahead.
Okay. It just occurred to me that this is a perfect story for intuition. So I knew that you spent time in Palm Springs, California, occasionally, that you were going there from time to time. And I was there on vacation and had just come from a hike and was looking at pictures that I took on my phone. And I happened to see a notification that you were traveling. And I thought, I wonder if out of all the places Craig travels, he might actually be coming to Palm Springs. Wouldn't that be funny? And so I looked up in the sky and I saw an airplane landing. And I did the math and I thought, oh my goodness, I think he's on that plane coming to Palm Springs. And so out of like, maybe this is a thing, my intuition's telling me he could be on that plane, I texted you and you're like, yeah, I'm here. Are you like following me?
We were literally on the tarmac. We had just landed. I think I took a picture from the airplane And we were on the tarmac and I got a text, are you by any chance, did you just land? And I'm like, we just a minute ago, I just turned my phone on. And then we were able to get together, and that was just a wonderful serendipitous. It was a good time too. My dad wasn't, my parents lived down there, and at the time they were dealing with some health issues, and so I was down there visiting to help. And just to have a little break to be able to just spend an hour poolside and kind of step away from the family dynamics and have that together was just a lovely, unexpected pleasure of you listening to the information you had to be able to make that happen. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I was very surprised. I've been working with the field of intuition my whole life, but I just love being surprised by it.
Yeah.
I always get a little bit awe-inspired. And so I'm wondering if you've had similar situations besides that one that we shared, that maybe have informed your clinical care or the direction that your life has taken professionally or personally. I don't want to put you on the spot, but if something floats
No,
up.
it's actually what I actually love about it is that, I knew some idea of where you wanted to go today. And so I had some ideas, but as soon as you just start asking it in conversation, popcorn and different times and like, oh, what am I going to share? And so yes, and I would say, since you asked about more professionally, I can think of things personally and professionally, but
Yeah.
one of the things that kind of vocationally actually comes up, and I hadn't thought about this in advance, was when I was in high school. I had no idea what I wanted to be, but I grew up in a culture where it was probably going to be maybe a doctor or a lawyer. I knew I was headed for further education, and really didn't know exactly. But later on in my life, when I was finding myself interested in becoming a chiropractor, I had totally forgotten that a chiropractor had come and spoken at my high school. And I remembered that when he did that and gave one of those kind of vocational day presentations, that it was actually a time where he was doing things like applied kinesiology and other things that I remember was like, whoa, that's really cool. And I forgot about it for years. Literally just somebody planted a seed that was dormant for 10 years, many, many years. And the long story is that when I was I was in Northern California then, and I was I had gone through college, I had been pre-med for a while. Then I decided I'm definitely not pre-med, and I moved to California. I worked doing manual labor and gardening and landscaping and just needed to get out of the academia. And started to find my way back to some sort of healing modality. And so one thing led me to massage. And that was something that had begun when I was young and got interested in that. And I went there, and then I was thinking, okay, you know what? But there's something more than this. And I started like remembering and connecting to like that high school memory. And suddenly that high school memory popped up. And then I was like in a communications course. And in that course, there was a chiropractor, there was another chiropractor. And all of a sudden, like the universe was throwing me down this direction that felt undeniable. I almost tried to push it away, but couldn't. And when I look at key times in my life, I remember also when I was in California, I was working for like a tech pharmaceutical company that I knew wasn't right for me, but it was the most money I had ever made. I was out of college, and I hated it, working in a lab and the hood and cover. And I remember that I got fired. It's the only job I've ever been fired with. And I remember going outside and like celebrating. Like I didn't plan to get fired, but I remembered, oh, yes, that feels so much better. So I want to say that kind of, I feel like I was kind of a hitchhiker in different vocational points that kind of gave me a little slap along the face. And there were those key moments and times. I remember at a point when I was pre-med in college, and it was like my junior year, and I was just struggling. I won't go into all the details, but it was a Halloween night in which I saw every other pre-med student dressed in their garb, and
Oh,
like their smocks. And it
yep.
was just like, oh my God, that's not me. And it was like that moment at which I realized I can't do this anymore.
Wow.
And I started like taking, comparative religion and just all kinds of courses that were really about inquiry, but didn't guarantee you a good grade by any chance that would get you into med school. But
Yeah.
I could look at like those key moments of intuition, realization, God slaps, whatever you want to call them, that were poignant moments that said, no, not that way, this way.
I love
And
it.
then the
Wow.
affirmation. So I haven't thought about those in a while, but yes,
Oh,
definitely.
thank you. Yeah, there's so many points here that you are sharing. Like, kind of, I'm seeing the in my mind's eye the children's game Candyland, that has
Mm-hmm.
this snaking sort of a path that winds around. It doesn't really ever reverse itself or do a loop de loop.
No.
Chutes and ladders, you could go
Right.
way up to the top and then get slammed
I
down to the
remember
bottom.
Candyland very well. That was a childhood game in our house. So yes, I do
Yeah, yeah.
remember. We're
It
dating
was
ourselves. Yeah.
for me growing up, and then for my kids, who are now adults. So yeah, it's been around a long time. But that notion of like following the path, it's not a straight line, and we don't
Yeah.
always know where we're going.
Right.
The circuitous path, like a butterfly that flies back and forth, or the dragonfly. And so you feel sometimes like you're lost. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, but I love how tuned in you were to your own inner authority and saying, like, they're wearing their scrubs. This isn't, we do that all the time. Now for Halloween, that's supposed to be playful and joyous or creative or out of the box. They're wearing their uniform, or it's not enough for me. I need to study other things, or the
But
job that
but I
wasn't
want to
enough.
say what's really important with that. If you'd have asked me at any of those points in time whether I
Yeah.
was intuitive, I would have said no.
Yeah.
Right. So like it's easy now to look in retrospect at those poignant twists and turns of taking a different path,
Yeah.
but at the point it was feeling not hopeless, but it was feeling exhausted or unsure or anxiety filled or without clarity. And none of them felt like, oh, I got this intuitive hit. I need to change my course of direction. Like it never has felt like that, or rarely has ever felt like that towards me. But in retrospect, it looks like that.
Right. I agree with you. I think that it's a matter of listening to your internal signals and following that authority and having enough trust in yourself, because it's so easy to be swayed by you're making a lot of money, or this is a good profession and it's a smart thing to do. It's like a
Right.
left brain logic approach, but you had a
Right.
compelling calling to say no and to live with the uncertainty and the vulnerability. And that is intuition. It's only the aha that makes it look neat and pretty, like
Right.
10, 15, 20 years later. And so, some people call it the dark night of the soul, when you hit that
Yeah.
unknowing part of just, it can be heart wrenching and traumatic
Mm-hmm.
and very dark and
Sure.
heavy
It is.
and confusing.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm. I had a first marriage, and together nearly 20 years, and never thought I would have been the one to have exited the relationship ever. I had made the commitment, and the transition. I look at it now, and it all happened so perfectly the way one ended, the other began. My life changed in so many incredible ways, but it was incredibly painful and difficult and hard at the time. But there was, I could, without detail because it's personal, but I mean, I can
Yeah.
remember a point in time when it became so clear. It was just like, okay, this is what needs to happen. And then of course there's all the you shouldn't, you should da da da, you should, all of the messy, who is it in Peanuts that has the big dust cloud? It's not Peanuts, it's Linus? No, I can't
No, no,
remember.
no.
Anyway, um,
It'll come to me.
exactly that one where there's the dust everywhere and there's
Right.
really no clarity until there is.
Yep.
And then it's like, I can't go back to that way that it was anymore. And yeah.
Wow.
And yeah, yes. So it again, I love that retrospect of those, and that's where like with clients, a lot of times when we're working, And we try to draw from the past of, right now you're in the midst of this kerfluffle and it looks messy and crazy and unclear. And I'll ask them, can you look back to other times that felt similarly, that
Yeah.
felt this on? I was like, absolutely. And it's clear now. Yeah. So in other words, it never feels normal. It never feels like, oh, I'm just in the middle of a dust cloud that's going to be really clear in a short period of time, and I'll have treasure in my intuition right now. And yet we can look back to those. So if we can use those, sometimes it makes the dust cloud settle a little quicker, maybe.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. Craig, I don't actually know that I knew that about your story.
Oh, okay.
So
Good.
yeah, thank you for sharing that. The name came to me as you were talking. It's Pigpen.
Oh, thank you. Yes, that's perfect. Very good.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you work a lot with people with trauma.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I really connected to you around before I actually knew you, the first time I actually saw you was at an ASEP conference when you and your wife were accepting an award for the beautiful fundraising that you had done through the work that you do, and that you were helping share that those monies with us and were given an award. And I just saw your heart up on that stage. And yeah, so that was like my first connection with you,
Thank
which
you.
was so beautiful. And you bring that heart. You have a brilliant mind, but your heart is really, I think, the true north. And you follow it. I've seen you switch direction with things, because I do think you have incredible sense, whatever you call it. It doesn't really matter the languaging, but trusting your instincts or just having a really good sense of what's true for you.
Thank you. I appreciate hearing that. That means a lot to me. It's funny. Just I honor that. And why is it so easy to go to? Yeah, but not all the time. And yeah, it's interesting to just watch those thoughts happen. But
Yeah.
I do that. Try to do that. And from kind of more of a professional pathway, but really life is. I kind of think because I've been through different chapters in my life, personally, professionally. And I always have this vision of how do we keep like an energetic pulse check on what we're doing or what we're attending to, where
Mm-hmm.
we're giving our attention. And is it still like a vibrant pulse? Because sometimes a relationship's meant to end, and sometimes a career pathway or choice has run its course and it's time for the next. And we can spend and linger as much time like this should be a lifetime career. This should, when I went through, I think about this. So there was a point at which the EFT work was really growing in need of my attention, and my wife and I are partners in that work. And my chiropractic, it didn't have as strong a pulse at that period of time.
Mm-hmm.
But I remembered how much my identity was tied in with Dr. Craig, and I was 25 years in practice, and what it meant being a part of my community here on Whidbey Island, and what would people think if I diminished that,
Mm-hmm.
and Alina was incredibly patient, but it took probably 3, 4, 5 years of me knowing that something needed to change, but wasn't ready to make that leap.
Yeah.
And as soon as I made that leap, and we have like a home office, and I'm more part-time in my chiropractic practice to spend more time in the teaching and training. And
Yeah.
as soon as I did that, it was so obvious that was right, and that enlivened me, and my pulse increased. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it takes longer than others to be consistent with the action steps required to keep that pulse and stay with one's heart. And to hopefully not spend a lot of time beating oneself up about the process or how long it took or that I should have known sooner or any of those things. And I really don't do that nearly as it's one of the that is something that I'll acknowledge about myself that's really come. I was thinking before their interviews like life lessons and what do I want to acknowledge, and one of them is really this gradual process that came about for myself of like, you know what? You're doing the best you can at any point, with who you are, the age you're at, the experiences you've had, you know, and it's like, you know what? Clearly, I wasn't ready to make that jump sooner, and it happened when it was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And that just takes out so much worry and anxiety and regret and guilt to just be able to be more present with the changes that I'm ready to make at any time.
Yeah.
And that just softens the belly. And you know, you can tell somebody else that, but I think we all find our own. Hopefully, we all find our way there.
Right.
And then we just keep checking that pulse. How's your pulse doing with this one? Yeah, it's still good. I'm still enjoying it. I'm still having fun with it until I'm not.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And you know, it's not to say that we want to keep chasing. I don't think you're insinuating that you want to keep chasing the high. You have to
No, not
sit
at
with,
all. Yeah.
exactly. So just to clarify that, because I know that about
Thank
you.
you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah. No, but there is, so whatever you want to call that resourced state that isn't about a temporary caffeine lift, right? That, oh, that's exciting. It's like, this feels right. This still nurtures me. This still fills my heart.
Yes.
Yeah, that's different. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Because we all have, you know, times of struggle and so on. But there's a death process, a letting go process. And I can already feel the audience, certain people in the audience hearing this and seeing it and saying, oh my goodness, they're talking about me. Because we all go through that. Sometimes it's an extended funeral. And other
Yeah.
times it's a sharp, traumatic, I'm done. Like with you with getting fired. And you're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
hallelujah, I'm out of
Done.
here.
Moving on. No,
Yeah.
that's true. I mean, I call it God's 2x4. Like sometimes you're working with it. It's like God's like, you might want to do something different, or the universe or whatever. And then finally, it's like, boom, you get hit by that cosmic 2x4, and it's like, change, shift lanes. Okay. Oh, now I see why.
Yeah.
And yeah. I think that you know, that soft belly place for me, everything always comes down to safety, and you know,
Mhm.
I'm good with that now. That's why I do what I do, because I didn't feel that one for a long time.
Yeah. And that takes
And
training and practice to get into that. That doesn't happen automatically.
it doesn't, and it takes number one, being okay with that. It's okay to seek that. And I
Yeah.
wasn't for a long time. I thought I needed to man up, and I thought I needed to
Mm.
be stronger and deal with it and all of that, and was told that, and took that in, internalized that. And and now a big part of does it feel right is, does it feel safe too? And that's just kind of part of that evaluation process. Whether it's a relationship, whether it's a job, whether it's where I'm living, whatever it is, does
Yeah.
that feel nurturing? And part of that is a feeling of safe. Can my belly be soft in this place, in this situation, with this person, in this whatever? And that's okay to use as an important indicator,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
otherwise, you know, first part of my life was always about trying harder to be different.
Oh.
Trying hard, right? It was always like, who you are isn't enough. Who
Uh,
you are isn't smart enough. You know,
hmm.
that if you weren't trying to be better, then something's wrong with you, right?
Yeah.
But I grew up also a competitive tennis player, so that got a little confusing, because to be a competitive anything,
Yeah.
there's a lot of effort and skill development and practice that's endemic as part of that. It's not just talent or something so alone.
Right.
But that's really different, developing a skill set, than it is who you are,
That's your identity.
you know, as your, so that's really different. And then to just be, this is who I am. And I'm okay with that. And anybody that's not, that's okay too. I don't have to change their mind or opinion. And the anxiety that goes down, or the stress levels that go down with that, are enormous.
The
Um,
pressure releases
yeah, yeah,
because then you're
yeah.
okay just where you are. Yeah.
Yes, and I think that, to bring it full circle to where we started, I think that when you're not in a place of stress and anxiety and worry and trying to change and fix and alter, there's, I think, a lot more bandwidth available for intuitive connection naturally,
Completely.
right? Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. When I teach how to develop embodied intuition, I have a whole list of things that get in the way and not surprise of developing intuition. And not surprisingly, the opposites of them are what you need to do to enhance your intuitive communication. So you're exactly right. All the things that shut you down or that move you out of your center, people
Yeah.
pleasing and all the rest. Yeah.
And it's so common, and it makes so much sense why we
Yeah.
do. And, from a adversity and trauma history, it's like, that place usually wins because it's trying to help us to survive and make it through to the next thing. And I get where it comes from. And that's, you know, so many of the conversations about what being trauma informed is and all of that is really just, I think, allows for empathy and compassion and understanding for why we're all doing what we're doing at any one time.
Yeah.
Getting back to that cycle, it's like there's a reason why I do this. There's a reason I worry about that. There's a reason I stress on that. There's a reason I try to please that. And the challenge, and kind of coming back to EFT, is knowing that often isn't enough. I
Right.
love that. So our daughter went to a Hampshire college, and their motto was "To know is not enough."
Oh,
I love that.
yeah.
Because how many things do we know I shouldn't do that? I know
Yeah.
that I'd be better if I didn't do, and that generally most of the time isn't enough to change a behavior or
Right.
you're coming from place. So whether it's, all the different modalities, EFT, matrix, all the different things that are out there to help one embody that place of not only do I know that, but I know that in my gut, or I feel that, or however you embody that.
Yep. Because
It's a totally different place.
totally, that little left brain that becomes so prominent in our culture and society is so slow, so limited, so behind the scenes, behind the times. It's the body that responds first, the heart, the gut, and then the right brain. And then the left brain is like the one thinking, dun, 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 I've arrived. Everyone's else like,
oh, now I do think that way, right? It's like the final step, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, but yeah, that's so great. So Craig, we're coming to the end of our time together, and
Already?
I know it goes
It was
fast.
quick.
I'm wondering, is there anything else you'd like to share about helpers or guides or intuition or your heart?
Yeah, I think there is, now that you say it that way. Um, just drawing from my own past, for those that identify with it, is often when I was around other people that I experienced as being more skillful, as in being connected to their guides, being spiritually feeling connected, being visual and imaginative. I mean, all of those things. All I had to do was be in their presence, and there was this duality of, ooh, oh God, not, I don't do that. I can't do that. I can't feel energy. I can't, right? So like the moment you had the, ooh, there was the slap down of what I'm not yet, or not enough of, or can't do, or it's just I'm not able to do that, and that's wrong. And then you'd have that downward spiral. And so what I would say is that for everybody, and I truly believe this, there's some way of connecting to things, but it's so unique with each person, and finding your own way to be okay with how you do know whatever you know.
Yeah.
People have very different processing styles. People have very different experiences. And just because I don't have guides talking to me doesn't mean that I'm any less intuitive. That
Right.
just because I can't see energy doesn't mean that I'm any less sensitive. I'm sensitive in my own ways. I know things in my own ways. I feel things in my own ways.
Yep.
And, I could tell somebody that, but the journey to be able to find, however that is, through our own journey of being able to accept this is how I know things, and it's different than the way other people do, and that's okay too. I think that was also a big one for me, and it's funny because as I started to do that, of course, then I remember like in my 20s, I had a good friend that was running a qigong studio, and it was like so I went to some of the classes, and it was, I don't want to say it was a disaster, but it was like there was no sensing things, and all I did was like listen, and then afterwards I'm like, I'm not coming back. And it was about 20 years later that I was living here on Whidbey Island. Somebody was running a qigong class, and I'm like, why not try it again? Probably. And it was like, whoa, okay, that's a really different experience than I remember 20 years ago. And it's not like I practiced it for 20 years or something. It was just kind of who I was 20 years later was very different than who I was back then.
Right. And a different setting and a different teacher and
all of
mindset.
that.
Yep.
So just because right now you can't fill in the blank, or you feel blocked with fill in the blank,
Right.
doesn't mean that's who you are, the way it's meant to be. It is what it is right now, and that's okay.
Yep.
So that level of, even though whatever, I still deeply and completely accept myself and honor who I am right now, because
Right.
that's who I am right now.
And
So
once that acceptance comes in, then there is a larger playground open for new abilities to come in too.
yes,
Because you're not saying no to them. Yeah, I actually know a lot of people who are incredibly talented, but I often say this, that we don't honor and cherish as much or even recognize our talents and abilities because they're natural. And then the things that you don't have, you see outside yourself and go, I want that, and so then you're like, and I don't have it because I don't have that. So I'm not a blah, blah, blah. But really, when you start to self-reflect and understand more about what this is all about, you realize you actually do. People say this to me, well, when you put it that way, I didn't think intuition was such and such, but when you put it that way, like, oh, I have intuitive things happening all the time. I dream of the future, or I know who to trust, or I switch directions at the last minute to avoid a problem, or, even when I think I'm running late, I actually show up on time, so, and people don't think of that often as intuition. So.
And when you say that, what it brings up for me is still an edge for me to continue to be, is as an ally. Because just like you said, I think we have to be careful about reframing it, telling somebody you are intuitive. Like if we contrast it too much, it doesn't work. But how do I be an ally and support through open-ended questions, ways that allow somebody to find their own path out of that pigpenny dust. And so that when we hold that possibility for them and we see them that way, even though that they can't, how do we not guide, because then that puts us in a different role, but how do we support and facilitate their being able to self-witness that for them?
Yep.
How do we give feedback? How do we ask questions? How do we be a friend? How do we be a mentor? How do we be a teacher? How do we do that in such a way that inspires their own self-discovery and self-acknowledgement of those pieces? I think that's for me right now in my roles in leadership. That's kind of my edge right now to continue to improve upon. How can I, because I can get as exasperated as anybody, and right, because there are challenges. How do I continually to listen and support so that they can see the highest version of themselves that they're able to at this point in time? That's good. That I don't think I've actually said that as with as much clarity of where I am right now is just there. So that's good for me. Thank you.
And that's a great place, I think, to leave this beautiful conversation, which I know we could go on and on for. I say that often at the end of my podcast, and I really mean it.
I know, it would be easy, but we have people listening that are at the end of their commute or at the end of their exercise or at the end of whatever. And I think this is a good amount of time to just say, okay, that's a good snippet, and maybe we'll come back together sometime.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And for all that you're doing in the world.
And you as well.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for today's podcast. If you want to learn more, you can visit my website for podcast and resources at hopshealingtips.com. You can also like, share, and subscribe to this channel. This podcast is for information and entertainment purposes only and is not providing healthcare advice. Please seek guidance from your professional healthcare team should you need assistance.